Hi there, everyone, and thank you for joining us today with Ankara Publications. Please take a look at our website, and that's ankarapublications.com, and we offer all sorts of materials to fight pornography and human trafficking. Today, we're going to be speaking about how pornography fuels human trafficking. I want to start by reading a quote here. People were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. And this quote is really captivating the essence of what we're dealing with society now with pornography and human trafficking. Trafficking has become an absolute epidemic in our society. It's a global crisis affecting billions of people's lives, yet it's hidden in plain sight, so many people are actually unaware that it's even happening while it's going on. And I just want to also interject that pornography has also become a global crisis and epidemic, something that's also hidden and something that people don't really talk about regularly. But anyway, we're going to talk about both of these topics today and their connection. So what is trafficking? Trafficking is the exploitation of individuals, and it happens in many different ways. And it varies from country to country, from region to region, though every case is different. So there's no one standard way that a person is trafficked. Some of the main things that we see in trafficking is forcing victims into prostitution, subjecting victims to slavery or involuntary servitude, and forcing victims to commit sex acts for the purpose of creating pornography. Again, there's many other ways that people can get trafficked, but these are the three main ways. So in today's world, believe it or not, there are between 20 to 30 million slaves. And numbers like that, to me, it's just impossible for me to even conceptualize how big that is. And so to just give you an idea, the population of Poland is roughly 38 million people. So 20 to 30 million people is a humongous number. And 80% of victims of trafficking are actually sexually exploited. And about 19% of the people that are trafficked are forced into involuntary servitude. And then we have the other small percentage, it's like organ harvesting and other things. People from all cultures, races, and countries are trafficked. So there is no discrimination in this. Men, women, and children, old, young, they're all trafficked. When you look at the overwhelming majority of the victims, they end up being women and children for most part. And also, traffickers oftentimes will target vulnerable populations. And so they'll go after people that are runaways, homeless youth, even people that are just getting out of orphanages. They'll prey upon them, victims of domestic violence or sexual assault, war, social discrimination, people that are abused in general, or kids that are having problems at home with their parents. All of these people are vulnerable, and these are the ones that traffickers know who to target. Sex trafficking is the fastest growing business of organized crime and the third largest criminal enterprise in the world. 49% of people sold for sex end up in pornographic material. This is staggering. And arguably from this information, we can understand that much of the pornography that people are consuming at this point, much of it is involving trafficked victims. You can just do the math here. And the issue here is that it's literally impossible when someone is viewing pornography, it is literally impossible to see or to know if that person in this video or the magazine, if they are a trafficked victim. So you just don't know. And every second, over $3,000 is being spent on pornography. And according to the ILO report from 2014, human trafficking generates a profit of roughly $150 billion per year. I just want to go ahead and read a quote from Lara Jansen of the Huffington Post. And it says, "Trafficked women and youth are frequently used in porn films. I have interacted with survivors who said they were not only trained for sexual exploitation by being forced to watch porn and imitate it, but they were also made to participate in porn that would be watched later by countless men without the victim's consent." So as I was saying earlier, the two go hand in hand. Porn fuels human trafficking, and human trafficking fuels pornography. Many clients also bring pornography, either photos or videos, to prostitutes, and they expect them to perform these acts. There are many ways in which people become trafficked. I mean, the list can go on and on and on forever, really, but I'm just going to list a few. So 3 of the main ones I would say are ways. For one, sometimes they'll just become romantically involved with someone that they love and trust or consider a boyfriend. And so then they've gained their trust, and then they'll manipulate or coerce them into prostitution. Another common way that people are trafficked are they are lured in by the false promise of a job. It could be a job or the false promise of something else. It could vary, but they're lured in by something, maybe a job as a nanny or a model or a dancer or a housekeeper, something like that. Maybe this is a job in another state or in another country, but they go ahead and they arrive ready to do their work, expecting to make some money, maybe from a poorer country or maybe someone that's poorer, maybe not too. And they get there and boom, they're tricked and they're put into trafficking. Other people are simply sold into prostitution, either maybe by their parents or by other family members. Anyway, these are 3 ways that it can happen. There are many others, but I just wanted to touch upon a few common ones. I came across a video online about a girl named Hope, and I just want to share a little bit about this story that I saw. She was 14 years old. She was having problems with her mom at home, and so she was on social media posting how she hated her mother, and somebody ended up contacting her, somebody she didn't know. And this often happens because people have friends that they know on their profiles, but a lot of times they friend other people that give them requests. So she didn't know this woman that had contacted her, but she had seen that she had posted this about her mother. So she said, hey, I can pick you up. We can go partying. Let's go do something together. So Hope says, okay, I'll go with you. She leaves. I think it was maybe 45 minutes after this interaction with this woman online. Hope is picked up and she's taken to a motel room. When she's there, she's greeted by a man who says immediately, take off your clothes. We're going to be taking these pictures of you. So of course, Hope was fighting this. Of course, she's not wanting to take off her clothes. They beat her. They ended up drugging her. And whatever happened to her, it's impossible to know exactly. But she found herself in a closet at one point. She was given more drugs and she was put to work. And she said she was having up to 20 clients per day. And I think this went on for about 3 weeks. And she was in many different states, several different states. But the point being with this was that, well, number one, it's really important to be careful when we're friending people, when we're on social media, when we're on the internet. We never know a lot of times who we're talking to, so we have to be very careful. She decided to talk to somebody that she didn't know and then to actually leave her house and go with somebody. And when people are vulnerable, these predators, these traffickers, they're looking on social media sites for kids, for people that are in vulnerable situations to take advantage and collect them. But also, another point, the first thing that happened to her when she entered into that motel room was, take off your clothes, we're going to be taking these pictures. So I wanted to just express to you this connection that we're seeing between pornography and human trafficking. So this woman is kidnapped, and then what's going to happen to her afterwards, a lot of these things are going to be put into pornographic materials. So not only is she going to be assaulted, raped, and tortured, but all of these things would be filmed. And so she wouldn't necessarily know, especially if she's drugged, what's happening to her and what's being done to her. But also the people consuming the material are not going to know that this person is actually a trafficked victim. The average age of a trafficked victim is between 12 and 14 years old. I want to offer some tips for safe internet usage. I have a list here that is geared towards kids, but keep in mind that adults should also be very cautious regarding what they're doing on the internet and just of their surroundings, because we really live in a different world than we have 10, 20 years ago. Things are much more dangerous and there's a lot more predators around. So number one, never give out your real name on the internet. Use a nickname or pseudonym. 2, never give individuals you meet on the internet your home address, telephone number, and or other similar information. You never know who you are talking to. 3, don't send your photos to strangers. 4, If you receive vulgar or concerning messages on the internet, don't reply. 5. Getting together with people you meet on the internet can be extremely dangerous, as you saw in Hope's case. If you are planning a meeting with internet friends, be sure to always check with your parents. Always arrange meetings in public places and go with your parents or another trusted adult. Now I just want to show you a clip, it's pretty short, called Sex Trafficking Kansas City.
Family church, and I've been involved with a group called Casey Street Hope. One of the common types that is used for recruiting is what's called the older boyfriend. So there may be a girl who is befriended by a boy or a young man who is maybe in his early 20s and she's only in high school, and he may shower her with affection and gifts and persuade her in thinking that they're having a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, when he may in fact be a trafficker or working for a trafficker, and the intention really is not to have a relationship with her but to get her engaged in this, for them, a business.
I'm working with a young girl who's almost 19 now, but when she was 12, she was hanging out at one of our local malls in the greater Kansas City area. And she was with 3 other friends. The parents dropped them off, and these 4 12-year-old girls are hanging out at the mall. And a couple older guys, nicely dressed, real kind, talking to them, start hanging out with them. And one of the guys in particular had an interest in this girl and pulled her aside and said, "Oh, you're so pretty, you're so strikingly funny, you make me laugh." He basically told this little girl everything any 12-year-old would want to hear. The long story short is it progressed to the point to where she started falling in love with this guy, and that's what's called Romeo pimping. So these younger, vulnerable girls will meet this older guy that they think is going to be a boyfriend. He kind of becomes a boyfriend. In this girl's situation, he got to know everything about her family but never met her. So this girl had a mom and a dad at home and a younger sister, a few years younger than she was. She was active in school, active in student organizations. She played sports. She was a straight-A student. And this guy found the vulnerability in her life and began to play on that vulnerability. All of us, even adults, have a vulnerability, some area of weakness. And these guys are master manipulators of finding what that area of weakness is. And they go after it. And he was just relentless and relentless, and finally got this girl to the point to where she was so in love with this guy, she's really did anything for him. Then he turned on her, and instead of being the nice older boyfriend, all of a sudden he was incredibly vicious. And I mean, he raped her brutally and videotaped and photographed the entire event. Within half an hour, was advertising her online, and his phone was ringing off the hook because she was fresh and brand new. And for the next several years, from the time she was 12 until she was 17, she was sold between 11 different pimps in the greater Kansas City area. And it all started with a very simple process of she was just hanging out at the mall and met a nicer older guy.
So many times traffickers do go where teens hang out. And so that may be at local hangouts like malls, chat rooms, social media, etc. So it's important to be aware of these things so we can make wise choices as parents, as kids. And like I said before, traffickers are everywhere, but the average age is 12 to 14 years old. So we just really want to be extra cautious with our kids. Now I'd like to share with you a story about Rihanna. Rihanna was born in Minnesota. At age 6, she was sold into prostitution by her mother. She was trafficked for 30 years. And during those years, she was in the hands of many different traffickers. She would be with some people for a few days, few months, years. It was always different. She was not always in Minnesota. She was also in different states. She was also in Europe. She remembers being in Germany. So it was a very difficult life for her, always being drugged, always being raped, and never really knowing what to expect in life. She had a lot of severe demands upon her life. And not only that, but she was expected to pretend as though she liked things that were being done to her. So if she wasn't being compliant in any way, or for example, if she didn't smile while things were being done to her, sexual acts, or wasn't pretending to enjoy it, she would have severe abuses, torments, whatever it would be. So she learned early on to try as much as possible to comply with certain things. But she often found herself hospitalized from the physical beatings, and her teeth, most of them were knocked out early on. At one point, she was branded as she was passed from trafficker to trafficker. One of her owners put an enormous tattoo on her back saying, "Property of Joe Brown." That wasn't his actual name, but whoever it was, he was trying to show his ownership over her life. And at another point, there was another branding put on her arm by another trafficker. So she was really struggling with feelings of really being a slave, never feeling free. She had no teeth. She didn't have any skills because she wasn't going to school and learning things that most kids do growing up. She had to struggle to get food. She sometimes was getting food out of a trash can or would just get a pizza once in a while, whatever it would be. But her life was one that most of us would just really not be able to relate to in most ways. One thing that she mentioned was that most of what happened to her was put into pornography. Even starting at age 6, when she was first trafficked, when she was first prostituted out, she was put onto postcards. And most of what happened to her, most of what was done to her, was videotaped and photographed. And still, she has actually been free for a short time. She was rescued and she's been working with a Christian organization. But most of what happened to her was put into pornography, and trying to get it off the internet is extremely difficult. So even though she is free, she's still living with the devastation of the pain and the memories of that, but she's also now having to deal with the fact that countless people are viewing pornography of her on the internet. Rihanna also lost a child. She was beaten so much when she was pregnant that the baby was aborted. But now that she is in this Christian ministry, she is trying to build her life back. She's starting a new life. She's now reading about at a 3rd grade level. She's learning how to cook, to properly drive, to learn about nutrition and finances. So her life is starting to get back on track, but it's going to be a long road of healing for Rihanna. Now we're going to watch another short video clip further explaining the ties between pornography and human trafficking.
I was 10 years old. My little sister was 5. My mother died a few years earlier. My father and brothers work in the field all day. Life was very hard. We had little to eat. One day, a man from our village promised to take us to a special treat, but instead, he sold my sister and I into a brothel far to the south, and we never came back. We were locked in a dark room, told we would have no food or drink unless we learned how to please a man. They made us watch pornography. We were forced to watch other children who had been in the brothel longer than us, so we knew what to do and how to do it. My little sister did not survive, but she suffers no more. I have nightmares sometimes. I'm afraid until I wake up in my new home with my new family, and I know I'm safe.
There are so many ways just that the average everyday person is able to help in this critical fight. And in my opinion, one of the very best ways, one of the best things that people can do is to actually stop the usage of pornography and to encourage others to do the same. Because by consuming pornography, it's creating the demand for the trafficking. It's fueling it. And so this is even the case with free porn sites. So consuming pornography in any way is helping to fuel human trafficking and keeping these people in chains. The way that advertisements work, the way that internet works, anytime that someone goes on and is clicking, it's supporting the traffickers. So now I want to read a few quotes. I want to kind of also point out that it's not only straight pornography that is fueling trafficking, But so much in the media is so sexual in nature, so abusive, that all of these types of things are also supporting human trafficking. So I want to touch upon a few of these things because, like I said, so many things are right now helping to fuel this atrocity. So, quotes from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Founded in 1962, the NOCSE is the leading national organization addressing the public health crisis of pornography and exposing the links between all forms of sexual exploitation. They denounced HBO's most popular series, Game of Thrones, pointing to its depictions of sexual violence as a way of turning this violence into mainstream entertainment as part of their Shame of Thrones campaign. Sexual violence is not a topic for HBO and Game of Thrones to exploit for mere shock value. Sexual violence is a real social harm with real, not fictional victims who bear the scars of their abuse for their entire lives. By the excessiveness to which sexual violence is an element of the Game of Thrones plot, the graphic depictions in Game of Thrones normalizes heinous sexual abuses and exploitation. Sexual violence against women is never romantic or glamorous. We need to boycott, reject films like 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Free, Game of Thrones, etc., all these types of things that glorify degrading physical and sexual abuse of women as something romantic. We should encourage others to do the same. Men's behavior toward women ought to be guided by more than just a set of lines and rules, but rather by an ethos that affirms the full and equal dignity and personhood of every person. This is the alternative to objectification. People have been treated by men in powerful positions as mere means to their own gratification as opposed to ends in themselves with their own intrinsic worth and value. Women are now standing up against this, demanding to be recognized for who they are. Persons, not tools. But there are so many other practical ways that people can help in this fight. I have prayer here at the top of this list because prayer to me is so vital, it's so important, and we have no idea how amazing it is to partner with God and to pray and ask for people's deliverance and freedom. I'm going to give you some examples of ways we can pray. So, for these traffic victims, the people that are in chains, praying for their freedom, for their deliverance, praying that they would have a wisdom in how to deal with their traffickers, how to deal with the different situations that are coming, prayer that they will just encounter God, that they will feel His love, that they will feel His embrace, that they'll just have wisdom to somehow get free. Also, to pray for the people that are keeping them in chains. So many things we can pray for them. Prayer that they're going to have conviction that they're doing the wrong thing, that they'll have the desire to, instead of putting these people in slavery, that they'll want to help get them set free, that they'll want them delivered, and they'll fight for their lives instead of trying to destroy their lives. So many ways we can pray. And also prayer that people would be freed from porn, that they wouldn't be fueling this industry from their consumption. Praying for purity, praying that all of these programs that are being put out into society that are glorifying abuse of children and women and people, sexual exploitation, that these things would no longer exist, that these programs would go off the air, that there'll be more programs that are godly, more programs that are supporting strong families and biblical values. So there's so many ways that we can pray, but something that can give you some ideas to start you off. Also, donations. You can donate or volunteer for an organization in your area, maybe that is fighting human trafficking. Also, another option is to counsel or mentor vulnerable children, because a lot of times, as I mentioned, the traffickers will target vulnerable people. And so if you have skills in counseling or mentorship, just listening, kind of like a mama or a papa for these kids, sometimes just being available for them is going to help them and work in preventative ways to keep them from being trafficked. Educate yourself. Also, just learn about trafficking, learn about pornography, and learn more about these topics. As a group, is there something we can do together to come up with a fundraiser or to do something creative to help? Sponsoring a child in poverty, that's another option as well, because as I had mentioned before, there are a lot of instances where in poorer countries where people are in poverty, they'll sell their kids because they don't have any money. And so they're trafficked. And so sometimes they had more money, this type of a thing wouldn't happen. Also, another important thing that I didn't mention earlier was that many times these people that are trafficked, they're drugged, they're forced to do different crimes or thefts or whatever it would be. So they may get out of trafficking, but they may have a lot of felonies or a criminal record. Like for instance, maybe they'll have drug charges, or they had stolen something, so they have other felonies, whatever it would be. So it's difficult for them to get jobs. So having this awareness, it would be really great if people were in organizations knowing that these victims were trafficked, that they would maybe provide jobs for them, or that they would give them internships to learn skills, whatever it would be, just to provide a place where they wouldn't turn back into prostitution. Because a lot of times they'll come out of trafficking and that's all they've known is this prostitution. And so if they can't get a job and they can't get money, they actually kind of are forced. They don't know what else to do. They're just back in that same lifestyle. Also, medical professionals. We really need you in this battle because a lot of these victims, they end up in the hospital because of all of their physical ailments and problems. And so by learning to be able to spot victims of trafficking and knowing how to talk to them and how to deal with them, what kind of services you could offer them, all of these things could be very critical in helping them out. So there's so many different things to do, but I want to go ahead and read this quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. I really like this quote because it encourages me. It can encourage you that just us as one person or a small group of people, we can change different things in the world. I really believe that, and especially with the power of God, as we pray, as we ask God, what is our destiny here on life? What do you want us to be doing? He can reveal to us, how can we help? And if this is something on your heart, human trafficking, the pornography, and fighting this, ask God, how can I be used in this area? Give me insight and use your talents, your gifting, your vocation, the skills that you like. What practical things can you do to fight human trafficking? Just ask God to reveal this to you, because I think if you're coming from a place of where you're at, if you have a beauty salon and you can offer free haircuts to traffic victims, or you can have a fundraiser for traffic victims, that's wonderful. Or if you're an attorney and you can offer some free help for legal help to victims of trafficking. There's just so many different ways that people can help in the exact place that they're at. They don't have to be anything like going in and rescuing victims, doing raids and rescuing them from brothels or anything like that. But I encourage you to pray for these victims, to pray how you can help. And God bless you for listening.